Welcome to the NLP Talks podcast, bringing you inspirational stories along with a good dose of potentially life-changing NLP strategies. I'm Laura Evans, multi-award-winning NLP trainer, and I'm on a mission to help you unleash your potential in business and life. I'm so glad you're here. Pull up a chair, listen in, and let's get started on revealing more about this transformational NLP toolkit. Hey, how you doing? I hope you're safe and well. Welcome to another episode of the NLP Talks podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I can't wait to reveal today's guest is the lovely Laura Bryan. Now, Laura is a nutritionalist by trade. And so I was really excited to interview Laura about the mind-body connection, because we talk a lot about it in our NLP training and how the mind can and does influence the body. But I was interested to understand Laura's take as a nutritionalist on the mind-body connection. She talked about it and the gut-brain axis. And we even talked about something brand new and breaking, which is psychobiotics, which is absolutely fascinating. And Laura shares in this episode how your gut impacts on how you feel and your mood. And I know you're going to love dipping into the expertise that she has. And we also then go on to talk about how Laura has then weaved NLP into her existing business. I think a lot of people think that the only people I train are coaches, and a lot of our students are coaches. But Laura explains how she took her existing nutrition business and how she's weaved NLP into it, a little bit as if sprinkling a little bit of magic fairy dust over what she was already doing in terms of helping her clients change limiting beliefs, get rid of things that are troubling from the past. And she even talks about how she's been using it in the wellbeing agenda of some of her corporate clients. I know that you're going to massively love this episode all about the mind-body connection. So without further ado, let's cut across to Laura as she talks about how she got into nutrition in the first place.
My initial introduction to nutrition was actually really young. I was about 11 or 12. And the introduction to me was very weird and wonderful, with adverts telling me I needed to eat cereal for breakfast and for lunch, and then I would look amazing in a red swimming costume. And I remember seeing magazines telling me I needed to eat less, and my parents eating very weird diets like egg and grapefruit diets. So for me, initially, nutrition was very weird and wonderful and quite restrictive. So because I started to want to learn more about it, I learned more. I went to do my undergrad in exercise, nutrition and health. And that's when I actually learned a little bit more about food. But the interest between kind of food and mood came a little bit later, when I was working out in the communities in South Wales and in very kind of deprived communities. And I was just noticing there was a lot of mental health issues. I was working with families to try and get them more active, to get them eating better. And the role was great. Like, I was trying to get mums into running or kids into swimming classes and things like that. But generally, depression was so high that families were struggling to get out of the house. Anxiety was through the roof. And at the same time, I was noticing diet was very restricted, very processed, vegetables once a week on a Sunday dinner. And I just knew, like, there was something with that. I knew when I started eating properly and colourfully, I felt incredible. And I just knew there was that link. So that's why I went and did a master's in nutritional therapy, set up my business. And that's why I just talk about this stuff all the time now. This is what I do.
I love it. I love following you on Instagram. And do go and find Laura Bryan on Instagram, company Mind Nourishing. Go and find her Instagram account, because Laura, I absolutely love your journey with food. I love that you photograph what you're eating, and it is inspirational. Like, I look at it and go, oh my goodness, yes. Like the other day you put a post up about stew, and I was like, oh my, yes, you're right. It's stew weather. I could get more vegetables into my stews, that kind of thing. So obviously we could do a whole show just on nutrition, but obviously we want to bring in the mind and NLP into this, because obviously, like all my guests on the podcast, you are also one of our community of NLP professionals. But before we get into that, I just want to talk a bit about the mind-body connection, because I think this is a great place to start. So you'll know, and everybody else that's listening to this will know, that I'm a massive fan of the mind-body connection. And we talk quite a lot about it on the practitioner course. But it wasn't something I always believed in. I really didn't. Like at one point, I thought my mind and my body were two completely separate things. I, as you know, and listen to the podcast, had depression and anxiety. And I would never, ever, ever in a million years have connected what I was eating with how I was feeling. And yes, the whole solution I know is not food. And that's where obviously all our mindset and NLP stuff comes in. But I never would have at that point ever stopped to think that what I was eating was having an impact on my mood. And it wasn't really, if I'm honest, until I met you that I started to think, oh my goodness, actually, maybe there is another element to this, which is actually, what am I eating? And it's funny because when I train, so obviously, as you know, and a lot of our students know, so I'll train up to 11 days straight. And I very, very early on in my training career, so years ago now, learned that once I've done 11 days of training, I have to fill my body with nutrition. And I learned very quickly to know that in those 2 or 3 days after I train, I have to eat good quality protein. I have to eat good quality vegetables, and I feel better for it. And it's a way of getting my energy levels back up. And I accidentally discovered that. So I want to know, Laura, from your perspective, obviously I know the NLP and the mindset side of this, but from your perspective, talk to us, educate me and educate our listeners about the mind-body connection from your perspective.
Definitely. And I think it's, first of all, so incredible that you've recognized that link now, because I think that's something that I'm always worried about, is that people don't associate it, and they're just kind of missing out on this huge element of our life that we eat, 3-5 times a day. They're missing out this opportunity. But I guess for me, what I always like to share when I kind of present around how food affects your mood, or if I'm working with a client who has depression, is that our gut and our brain are 100% interlinked. We know that they're interlinked between the vagus nerve. And what we know is that this kind of connection between our gut and our brain, like old me would have thought, oh, it must be all of the messages going from the brain down, because our brain is what rules our body, right? So for me, it was kind of mind-blowing when I realized that, or learned that 80% of the messages go from our gut upwards.
Really?
So our gut, so our gut is termed as like our second brain now. And we know that it's pretty chatty, like it's constantly telling our brain what's going on. So for me, it just seems now so clear that what's going on in our gut really does quite often indicate what's going on in our mind. And there's been so much research recently about our gut bacteria, our gut microbiome, and how that influences how we feel. And even the fact that over 90% of serotonin, our happy hormone, is created in the gut just makes me feel,
that high. Wow.
Yeah. And it does have obviously different roles. It's used a lot with the motility of your gut and kind of digesting. But just the fact that there are some of these kind of neurotransmitters in our gut, like dopamine, that kind of motivation, reward feeling, and GABA, which is that lovely calm feeling, they're created by the bacteria in our gut. So obviously our gut is influenced by what we eat. So there's just all of this like spider web of like how things interlink. But it's such a super, I find it super interesting just to see how what we eat can actually really impact how we feel.
I love the fact that, like, obviously I've followed you on Instagram for a long time now, and I love the fact that you're always learning. Like, I always see you going off to conferences, which are quite high profile conferences, with medical professionals, really starting to change. I mean, in the time you've been in nutrition, have you seen a shift in how people talk about food and mood? Because to me, it looks like the world of medicine is starting to change, which as an NLP, I'm hugely excited about. Because people, I think, have treated the body too mechanically in the past, if I can say that. Yeah. And actually, I love the fact that medicine and medics and science now is starting to go, actually, maybe it isn't just a mechanical body that we have. And actually, there's this other stuff, if we call it like the vagus nerve. People talk a lot about the vagus nerve. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about that, because maybe some listeners of the podcast don't know much about that. But that's very recent, isn't it, in terms of nutrition and things like that? So have you seen a shift in how people are talking about food and mood?
And that's what I kind of love, but it's also what's kind of can be so frustrating, is that it is so fast paced now, how much we're learning about the gut microbiome and how it kind of works, that what I learned kind of 4 years ago at uni is constantly out of date as we learn more and more things, which is why obviously I find it so important to continue to kind of keep learning as we go through. But definitely, I think we used to think very much like it's a one size fits all, and we should tell everybody to eat this and this will be how it impacts it. But obviously now, like I was laughing at a workshop I did recently, because it felt like for every answer, I was pretty much being like, well, it kind of depends. And like, it depends on your genetics and like how you were born. Were you a natural birth or were you C-section? And it depends on kind of your ancestors and what your, and it can get so confusing. Obviously, I don't like to confuse people all of the time.
Yeah, of course.
But sometimes it is just incredible that actually now we know that with nutrition, there isn't like, you've almost got to be a study for one. Like you don't know how food will impact you, and it probably will impact you very differently from someone who you're sat next to at work. So it is so interesting. And I think that's why it's so important that people have a lot of personalized kind of support when they want to make changes.
Yeah, no, sure. So I've heard you write and talk previously about the brain-gut axis and connection. So is this pretty much what you've just been talking about, or is that a little bit different?
Yeah, so I think that the gut-brain axis is kind of like an element of that like body-brain connection. Like we know that someone's gut environment can impact how they feel. So for example, someone with depression tends to have much less diverse gut bacteria, whereas someone who lives in a blue zone, who lives really long, who's really happy, who kind of has a really fulfilled life, have a really diverse gut bacteria. So we know that how our gut presents can impact how we feel. But obviously, I don't think I know it's not the only thing in the factor. I'm also really interested in kind of working on mindset, because often if I'm working with someone who's really stressed, that impacts their gut. So I think it's all really interlinked. We really have to work on someone's mindset and nutrition, or it might even just be that we need to work on someone's lifestyle around sleep. So yeah, I think there's so many different things, but I think for me, obviously my main interest is that gut brain connection and not optimizing that as much as possible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Oh my God, I'm learning all much already. And we're so just short into this episode. I'm like, oh my goodness, there's all this other stuff I need to know. So before we start, because I want to get into this whole more mind thing, obviously, because we're on the NLP Talks podcast. But just before we do, again, I saw you, and I'm sorry, it feels like I've stalked you on Instagram. But, but I learn from all the stuff that you share. I heard you go to an event and you put a post out about psychobiotics.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my goodness, what on earth is that? Because obviously we all know about antibiotics and the fact that they're overused and, all of those things. But there was then this idea of the psychology of food. And anyway, explain to me and everybody else, what on earth is psychobiotics? Even if I've said it right. Have I said it right?
Yeah, you have said it right. And I'm not surprised that you might not have heard of it, because it is actually a really, really new term. And basically from my understanding, obviously it's new, so I'm still learning about it. But from my understanding, psychobiotics are, because we know that certain bacteria can help us to feel better, feel energized, scientists have now started to identify certain types of bacteria that have been linked with better mental health conditions. So the idea is now, moving forward, that we can use these very specific strains with individuals who are struggling with mental health issues and use them as an intervention to support that kind of gut-brain axis so that they feel better mentally. So it would be like a type of probiotic where you're putting in bacteria, but you're specifically checking in all of those bacteria that have loads of research behind them to actually improve your mood. So who knows how we don't 100% yet really know how it works. There's obviously lots of different ways it can, but it's, really, really interesting.
I'm like, oh my goodness. So that's just like a whole blow my mind, because that's like talking about not only what you eat and how that affects your mood, but also the bacteria. I mean, it's like all these bacteria living in my gut. And I'm like, oh, I'm a bit creeped out by that, Laura, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But that's impacting how I'm feeling and all of that stuff. And it totally makes sense if I think about some of the health challenges I've had over the years. Like, you can totally see how, your gut has that impact. So anyway, listen, I can ask you about all these wonderful things I know you know all day, but I want to, kind of move on to start to talk about that kind of where you see the mindset stuff and nutrition kind of overlapping. So you started to talk just now about, how, for example, stress is impacting on people's health and all of those things. So with your obviously vast nutrition training, and then obviously you've been doing your mindset training and NLP training with me, and you've started that journey with me. I'm just wondering, like, how do you see mindset and the mind and health in people's body? Like, how do you see that mind-body connection really playing through when you start to then bring in the mindset element?
Yeah, well, I think for me, what really attracted me to kind of the extra training with you is that I was just noticing time and time again that I was, and this is always the way, you can't just give someone information and then click your fingers and they do it and it's all great. So for me, I wanted to have more of an impact with the people I worked with, whether it was one-on-ones or in companies. And I knew there was a missing piece of the puzzle. Like, I'd learned about rapport myself, and like I knew there was like certain bits, but I knew for me there must be a better way to kind of motivate people, get people to change their habits, get people to change how they see the world around them. And for me, that's the kind of the element that NLP filled. And I think I've always been super interested in terms of how the brain worked. And now it's just, I'm just so grateful that now I understand a very little bit more, but enough more now to pass that on to other people and just, I think, just get people to start thinking about things in a different way and maybe challenging some of these language not issues, but I laugh now, but when a client says to me, oh, I'll try that. I'm like, oh, try? Or are you going like, and it's just these little things that I know now that I'm 100% helping my clients more because I'm picking them up on some of the things that they're unintentionally doing that are holding them back. So I think that's how it's kind of linking so well.
I love it. I love it. And of course, if you listened to a podcast previously, you'll have heard us talk all about language and the word try. So this is one of the things we start to introduce at the NLP practitioner course level when people come is like the clients give you clues in how they talk to you. So, just to kind of just explain that a little bit more. So in NLP, we talk about what comes out of people's mouths is the surface level structure of language. And it's the tail end of the deep processing that goes on at the unconscious level. And so the client always gives you the clues because they always come out in their language. And when you're trained in NLP, and you start to learn about language, like Laura was just saying, and we talk about the word try to the unconscious mind implies the possibility of failure. And so when a client is saying to Laura, well, I'll try, what they're actually saying is, well, there's possibility. I mean, it might happen, but actually probably won't happen. And now Laura is able to pick that up in her coaching with her nutrition, with her one-to-one clients, which is just, it was just amazing. But yeah, we always laugh, don't we, about little simple words like the word try. And all of a sudden, a little flag goes up in your head, doesn't it? Go, and whoa, try?
You notice yourself doing it as well. And I think that's also been powerful. Like I'll start to say something like, oh, yeah, I'll try or I should. I'm like, no, like be clear, Laura, with your communication to yourself. So yeah, it's been really helpful in terms of my own shift, but then the shift of those I support as well.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about you, and we'll obviously come back to all of the stuff you do in your nutrition business, but just talk about you for a moment. So because at the moment, at the point of recording this episode, you've done your certified NLP practitioner course with me. You're in a couple of weeks' time going to come back and join me for the coach course. And then next year, you're coming back to do masters. So you're going to do the whole program, which is brilliant. So having done 7 days with me in Cardiff, and of course the pre-course study, let's not forget that, and the knowledge there. I'm just wondering, like, what are the differences you've noticed in yourself as a result of the training that you've done so far?
Yeah, so I think like I like to dive into things a little bit, and kind of before the NLP, I'd done a lot about like around self-development, read loads of books, listened to endless podcasts, and you start to kind of think, oh, maybe I'm all right. I was like, yeah, maybe I've like sorted out this mindset stuff. And then I quickly realized from doing some of the kind of processes and things like that in the practitioner course, like how actually I am still being really, really held back by some limiting beliefs. And for me, I think one of the main ones was I'm not worthy and I'm not good enough. And things that I kind of knew, I knew I had in the past, but surely I've got past that now. And it was quite evident that I hadn't. And I did really notice like a shift after that, and again, it's not like I woke up every morning and thought, I don't feel like I have that limiting belief anymore. It was more of the fact that a couple of months after, I started being like, I hadn't really felt like I've got imposter syndrome for ages. And like, I hadn't like kind of worried much about my worth in terms of when I'm talking about prices. Like it just feels so natural. So I think for me, like getting rid of some of those limiting beliefs that I didn't think were much of an issue, but they actually really were. So that has been incredible. And also I think about, like, obviously I talk a lot about a kind of professional basis in terms of limiting beliefs, but also personally as well. I remember the whole, like, I am like not worthy kind of belief. Like I just always felt like, do I look good enough? I'm like, I don't look good enough. And all of that really, really personal thing that can get you down. And I've just recently gone on holiday and it's just incredible just to be like, don't care. Like, I'm just me. This is just like, this is how I am. Like, and that has been really lovely as well.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Like, and I don't think any of us should ever underplay just what a difference that makes to your quality of life and your ability to have joy in your life, because you've just come back from the most beautiful holiday, which I'm going to go and find that hotel, and the most beautiful holiday. But but a lot of people are quite self-conscious, aren't they, about their body and about who they are when they're on holiday, and actually just to go on holiday and not to give it a second thought and just enjoy the time with your lovely husband and doing all the wonderful things that you did and just be you. And I know it sounds very simple to say that, but so many of us have this internal dialogue, don't we, that just does overtime. And we're so critical of ourselves, and I'm not good enough because I don't look how I should look, or I don't eat how I should look. But actually, and I'm not saying we shouldn't worry about what we eat. Please don't think I'm saying that. I have to be careful. I've got nutritionists here today. But no, and you're lovely, and I know you wouldn't take it like that. But I think it's true though, isn't it? Like we mentally beat ourselves up, and to actually be good in your own skin, like that's amazing.
Yeah. And actually it's something that I do with my clients, but I do a lot about trying to move away from like dieting and kind of punishing our bodies and kind of looking to be more intuitive and learn more about that, like listen to the messages your gut is telling you about what it needs, and that intuitiveness around that. And it's quite interesting because I've done a lot around kind of like body confidence in myself and kind of overcoming loads of things. But there was obviously something still really embedded that I hadn't realized until kind of unlocking some of these limiting beliefs. So it's been really, really powerful.
Yeah, no, I think so. And I think it's like, there's a whole, like this, I mean, we could do a whole other podcast on the gut and the unconscious mind, but like who's to say that your gut isn't your unconscious mind, or your gut isn't at least part of your unconscious mind? Because, where do these internal thoughts, when I say people trust yourself, trust your instinct, these are all the things that we have, like where actually is it? And of course, we don't actually categorically really even know. So it could possibly be, some people will say, well, it's the heart intelligence. Some people will say, well, it's the gut intelligence. What we do know is that it's not all up in here in our brains. We know that. And there's tons of research, as you've already said, that says that now. And I just think the whole thing is just fascinating. The more I get into it, the more I want to learn.
We're pretty incredible, aren't we, as human beings? We're pretty cool.
And I just get a bit disappointed because when we're coming up in school and we do biology at school and we do all that stuff at school, and we're taught like we're very simplistic, beings. And like you said, it's a spider web of stuff, And
the more you learn, the more you're kind of like, overwhelmed by how interlinked and incredible everything is. So, just obviously for more comedy, or not comedy, that's the wrong word, but for interest for people. So on your practitioner course, I believe you did a particular technique that might have had something to do with Diet Coke, maybe? So I did dislike with you, which was very funny. And I remember kind of like, because I brought in a can of Coke, and I'm not someone who drinks it all the time, but it's one of those things that, I enjoy and have now and then. And I remember I brought a can in and I had my final sip, and you were like, right, make sure it's not in, get rid of the taste, swill out your mouth with water. And I remember after the kind of, because I wasn't really knowing what to expect, but I remember just I don't fancy it. Yeah, carry on, see what happens. But the time when it really, really struck me was I was shopping with my sister and we were walking along Cardiff High Street, and they were giving out free Diet Cokes. And I am such a freebie lover. Like I am, if there's any kind of something being offered on a plate that's free, I am 100% there and trying it. And I was just like, oh, no thanks. And for me, then I was like, wow, that really, I haven't had it since. And I really didn't even want it when it was free. So that was just really, really interesting for me.
I love it. Didn't even want it when it's free.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
Oh, dear. And have you had any Diet Coke since? Or are you still off it?
No, I haven't I haven't consciously made that decision, but just never. I think that's the thing, isn't it? You don't, it's not about consciously doing it. It's about unconsciously kind of being like, nah, I think I'm all right, thanks.
Yeah. And I think that's the powerful thing, isn't it? I always say to people, one of the great things I love about NLP is, unlike other methodologies that are out there, you don't have to constantly remind yourself not to have your Diet Coke. It just happens at an unconscious level, because obviously we know that pretty much the majority of our behavior is unconscious. And so therefore it's not about having a little message on repeat in your head, like a little answer phone message going, stay away from the Coke, stay away from the Coke, stay away from the Coke. That's not what it's about. It's about, your behavior has changed. Your unconscious programs and patterns have changed. And I guess you must see that a lot in your work, because I know, from the research I've done. So I used to work in food retail. So I know quite a bit about how people shop unconsciously, we eat unconsciously, and all of those things. So I guess that there's quite probably a fascination for you between the unconscious patterns and programs that we run and the impact that has on behavior, because behavior is part of the jigsaw puzzle that you're using in your one-to-one and corporate work, I guess.
Yeah. And I think that's why I always like to work with people for a little bit of time, because initially, when we're trying to change conscious behavior, it's hard and it goes against the grain and it feels a little bit clunky and weird. And obviously I'm still in early days of kind of integrating NLP, but obviously I have time on my side now in terms of that I work with people for a longer amount of time, so I can help them rebuild and kind of create those new neural pathways and create those new behaviors. But now I've got this other bit of pizzazz to sprinkle in that says right, let's use some of these NLP techniques as well to make it even easier for you. So I'm really I'm really excited, I think, to do the NLP coaching with you, because although I've started to integrate it, I think that would just be next level for me to just start really combining it in my own head and my own business as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people say that when they come back on the certified coach course, that's where everything starts to fall into place. So yes, I'm super excited to share that all with you in a few weeks' time. Just want to talk. So you mentioned there about working one-to-one with people over a period of time. And I know you have two parts of your business. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about both of them, if that's okay. So we'll talk a bit about your corporate work in a minute. Mm-hmm. But in terms of your one-to-one clients, I know you see people on a one-to-one basis, and like you say, do your nutritional coaching and mindset coaching around that. So I'm just wondering, like with the NLP training you've already done, are there maybe a couple of case studies that you could share with us that just show, because I'm just conscious, a lot of people that think about doing our NLP courses are often like, yeah, but Laura, how would I integrate NLP into what I already do? And you've already alluded to how you're doing that. But I'm just wondering, are there a couple of actual kind of case studies that you're able or willing to share about how you've been using your NLP with your one-to-one clients?
Yeah, definitely. So one of my clients, she started to make some really, really big changes, but it was quite interesting. Through the conversation, she started saying how she always felt like she had to just kind of go above and beyond, and actually like maybe she's not worthy of that kind of body that she wants and losing the weight. So obviously with my new knowledge, we kind of, I really, really wanted to kind of work on some of these limiting beliefs. So we did one around, I'm not good enough. And at the end of it, again, kind of picking up on that visual cues and things like that. She was like, yeah, I feel better, but I knew that wasn't probably the big shift. So I kind of pressed for something else, and we went into I am not worthy. And I could just tell, like, and it's so amazing when you see it, but I could just see her, like her shoulders dropping. And as we were going through, kind of like, she, like near the end, she just got quite emotional because she just felt that shift of when she released everything that kind of she was holding on to in terms of she's not worthy and like of losing this weight and feeling like she always has to be 110% at everything. So for me, that was just incredible because I know myself, I'd felt that shift, but seeing it and also doing it online, which was another element of difference that like I was worried a little bit that it might lose its power, but kind of seeing the impact it had on her and that kind of, the change in her physiology was really amazing in that particular client.
Oh my goodness. And like we talk, don't we, about the power of belief and how whatever it is you believe to be true will become true because that's how you're acting. And just to think that, you were able to do that. I'm just curious for those people that have never done NLP, Laura, when you say that you helped to get rid of that limiting belief that she wasn't worthy, like how long did that actually take you to do to help her?
Probably the two beliefs that we did, just over half an hour, like it, and like it'd been, I'm a little bit slower than you, maybe, but it probably would, it was about half an hour.
Let's say half an hour, right? Let's say half an hour. Yeah. So if we think about how long she's had those limiting beliefs of I'm not worthy and I'm not good enough, years, I would imagine, absolutely years, and in 30 minutes, half an hour, roughly, you had her physically looking different because of the shift and also in her head. Like, I'm just wondering, like, what was her reaction when you did it? Like, what did she say?
Wow, she was crying initially, and she was just like, I just really felt a shift. And then in the next session, kind of like a few weeks after, she was just beaming, like, and that was really nice for me, that reassurance that she still felt that change, and she's still like, and she was laughing, and she said like her new ingrained kind of like belief, she wanted to add a beep word into her, so I won't repeat it. But she was laughing and being like, yes, like, and she was really, you could see it was like part of her physiology now. So,
oh my goodness, that's just amazing. Have you got any other examples of where you've helped people?
Yeah, so I was working with a guy who is quite an interesting client because it was a little bit different from some of my other clients, but he really wanted to work on the stress and anxiety he gets around food and like sitting in social situations. And it all kind of stemmed back from a particular event that happened when he was traveling that kind of then triggered this response. So we did a fast phobia model on him, went back to that event, kind of replayed it, took the emotions out. I even managed to put the the song on. I can't remember the name.
Yes, well, those of you trained in NLP with me will know what that song is. I'm not going to name it because I probably can't for copyright reasons. But we all know, those of us that have been trained know what that song is that we use in that process. Yes.
And then so before, it used to worrying him for when he first started working with me, he had a wedding in 3 months' time that he was really, really stressed about. And then kind of the week after, he went out for dinner with his friends and it wasn't an issue. So kind of when you talk it back, it's wow, that is actually a really big shift. But yeah, I guess when you start using NLP, these are the shifts that you see quite often. So that was really powerful.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. And I think I always say to people, and you'll know this, and the students listening will know this, I say it's almost a shame that they called the NLP fast phobia model the fast phobia model, because it kind of suggests that it's only actually useful for phobias. And actually you have to get behind the skin of the title of the technique to really understand its value, and for those of you listening to the podcast episode, what we're talking about here that Laura's just mentioned is obviously a specific event from the past that was playing on her client's mind. And that memory, if you like, that constantly is on repeat in his head every time he goes into those social situations, that's going to make him anxious. That's going to make him stressed because he's going to be worried about whatever it is that happened back then might happen again. And so what we're doing is we're taking an event that's happened in the past that's causing that client a level of discomfort, and we go back and we run the movie in a very, very specific way. It's very comfortable, it's very easy, and children are great at it, adults are great at it, but we run it in a very specific way to rub the kinesthetics, the negative emotions off the memory. Delete the memory is still there. It's just that it doesn't trouble the client in the same way. It basically just becomes a memory like every other memory in the memory bank. It doesn't get treated any differently to the point that it would make them anxious moving forward. And it is, I use the fast phobia model a lot in my business coaching, and I never thought I would. But actually, like you've just said, Laura, it's just so good for when anybody's got a memory from the past that's causing them a problem. I'm with you. First thing I think of, fast phobia model, run that movie, get the negative emotions off it, and then you're away. And but that's life-changing for him, isn't it? How many times does he end up in social settings where that was causing him a problem, and now he can have confidence that he's going to be fine?
Definitely. And it was so nice because it was like a bit of a last resort. He'd done years of different therapies and things like that, and it was more I'll see if food can have a difference. And it was just so nice that obviously I worked on his nutrition and supported him in that way, and his gut health, which we now know links with mood, but just to also add that other element in was just I hope it was an added bonus. And you gave me a lovely testimonial, so I think he agreed, which was nice.
Yes, I love it. I love it. But this is where I get so excited because, I say to everybody on the courses when people come, this toolkit is so flexible that you can pretty much use it in most situations to help most clients that you would want to help if you're a coach or a therapist or working in that kind of area. And this is exactly what I'm talking about, which is, he didn't come to you for mindset coaching, but you've actually done what he's asked you to do, which is focused on his nutrition, and then had this extra bonus thrown in. Both the examples you've given, this extra piece that actually just completely transforms and almost enhances what you were already offering them. It's that little bit of fairy dust, if you like, that you sprinkle over the top, and just makes even more value for your customers and your clients. And so excited. Thank you for sharing both of those.
Right.
I have for those of you that are listening to the podcast, I have a great big grin on my face now because I'm just yay! So exciting. Now, I know obviously you do a lot of one-to-one work, and I know you do that, and you've got some hugely wonderful testimonials from all your clients you've worked with. But I know that there is a different side to your business as well. So we get quite a lot of senior managers and HR professionals listen to this podcast. And I know that you also have this other side of your business where you like working with big corporates to support their well-being agendas. So I'm just wondering if you could share a little bit about how NLP has added to that side of your business.
Yeah, so I think initially, taking it back to the real basics, so I deliver a lot of awareness sessions around how food affects your mood, eating for energy, reducing stress through rest and digest presentations. And I think I was just I feel like I was delivering them well, but some of the things that I learned from the NLP practitioner course was just adding in those different bits of language to engage different people depending on whether they're kind of like a visual like language or auditory, like, so kind of changing up how I start the presentation, adding in key phrases to like engage with the unconscious mind in terms of talking about, oh, if you're sat here listening to me, watching me talk, like that means you're going to improve your gut health. So just all of these little things that I believe are going to be giving it that extra element of impact. So there's some of the things that like I've introduced already to my presentations, but it's just meant that I've been able to open up the amount of impact that I can have. So now, rather than just awareness sessions, I can actually go into organizations and allow kind of support those who I'm working to maybe be a bit more confident in themselves, but also confident in how they can change their habits, and that confidence around how they can take charge and kind of that they can make changes to their diet and to their mindset and all of these things. So I think it's just opened up what I can do. Like, I'm now doing more with senior managers around how they can more effectively help themselves, and then how that can trickle down into the teams that they work with. So I just feel like now, like, the return on investment that companies are getting is just so much bigger, because I know that food has such a big impact, but now I can deliver food and mindset. So it's early days, but it's really exciting about how that element can grow as well.
And I think that's it, isn't it? You know, again, we get a lot of people that come on these courses that don't want to be a coach. Now, you are doing a coaching role with your one-to-one clients and things like that. But we get quite a lot of people that come that actually that's not what they're here for, but they actually want to take what they already do and they want to take that to the next level. And they see these courses as an opportunity to just add to what they already do and to, add some extra elements in. You know, like, I love the bit you were just saying about, how, taking on board what you're saying and eating means that they're going to improve. Now, of course, in language terms, that's known as a complex equivalence, and that all sounds very scary and very technical. But actually, it's just equating two things to be the same. So, definition of a complex equivalence is two things equated to be the same in a complex way. Even the definition is a little bit complicated, I grant you. But essentially, that what Laura's just done is she's taken two things and equated them together, and that is speaking directly to the unconscious mind. And if Laura wants her workshops in the corporates that she works in to have the best impact, if she takes her nutrition and food knowledge and expertise and then uplifts her presentations with some of the language patterns and some of the delivery. Laura just talked a little bit about rep systems and tailoring her presentations to appeal to both visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and auditory digital audiences, people that are in her audience. These are the things that just lift the presentation to a whole new level. And I agree with you, Laura, like the ROI on those workshops now is even higher than it would have been before, because those people are actually going to be more likely to take action because of how you've delivered and position the same knowledge as you would have delivered before, but delivered it now in a slightly tweaked way to really help them get to the point of taking that behavior and actually getting there, which is just so exciting to hear that you've done that as well. I think you've also, if I'm right in thinking, taken some of the NLP stuff you've learned and created a brand new workshop that you're going to be offering to some of your corporate clients as well. Is that right?
Yeah. So next week, I'm going to be delivering some kind of like confidence boost workshops, which is really exciting for me because this is what I obviously wanted to build up towards. So they're being delivered at a conference. They loved the idea of it so much that I'm delivering it twice over 2 days, along with some energy balls like workshop that I'm also doing. But for me, I'm just super excited to start doing some of these techniques with groups. So I'm going to do around kind of like anchoring. So using the confidence circles, getting people up. They were really, really keen for it to be interactive. So it's just going to be nice getting people out of their chairs, like going through some of these processes in a really short amount of time. I know that that's going to have a really big impact. So I'm excited to run that.
I love the circle of excellence and confidence. It's one of my favorites. And as you say, it's great. It lends itself perfectly to a workshop, which is, again, one of the things I always say to everybody on the practitioner courses is like, think about how you can take this knowledge and package it up in a way to help other people. And sometimes that's one-to-one, sometimes that's groups and workshops. And actually, you have the knowledge to be able to do both. So yeah, super excited. I can't wait when you come back in a few weeks to hear how that went. I should be asking you. I'll be like, Laura, how did your workshop go? But it's just, it's just brilliant. I'm so I can't tell you how proud I am and how excited I am for all of your corporate customers in their wellbeing agendas and the one-to-one clients that you work with. It's just amazing to hear how some pre-course study with me and 7 days of training is already having an impact for you personally, but it's also having a benefit to your one-to-one clients and your corporate clients. That's just phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Listen, I could talk to you all day about all of this. Like, there's loads of other things that we could talk about, in places that we could go with this conversation. But I know you're tight for time, and you've got other people, another one-to-one client you've got to see very shortly. So I know that. So Laura, I just want to say thank you so much. It's just such a pleasure. Always a pleasure to have you here. But, to really hear about some of the knowledge you have, which is fascinating, and also how you've used it. So thank you so much for being so open and sharing all of that with us. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me.
Yay. So Laura, if anybody is listening to this podcast episode today and they want to get in contact with you, either because they want to do some one-to-one work with you, or maybe they are responsible for a wellbeing agenda in an organization and they want to engage with you to support them from a more corporate perspective, what is the best way for them to get hold of you if they wanted to pick up a conversation with you?
Yeah, so I would just go to my website, which is mindnourishing.com, and you can book a free 20-minute discovery call easily through there, or LinkedIn. If it's more of a kind of HR corporate, just find me, Laura Bryan, on LinkedIn, and just send me a message there. It's probably the easiest.
Yeah. It's exciting. I really hope, that people reach out to you and take that up. I know if I was still back in my HR days, I would be snapping at to snap you up and get you in, because you get such great reviews from your corporate clients and, really, really do make such a difference. So, I'd definitely be getting you in if I was in HR, that's for sure. So yeah, cool. So as regular listeners of this podcast will know, we always finish up the interview with a quick fire round. Laura has absolutely no idea what I'm about to ask her. So a little drum roll.
You're very warm in here.
Yeah, exactly. Laura's like, right, hold on, let me take my canty off. I need to get ready for this. So I'm going to ask Laura a few quick fire questions, and let's see what else she's got to say on the matter. So we'll start with this first question because it's quite apt given you're a nutritionist. If you had to eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh, I'm such a foodie. The first thing that comes to mind, though, is curry. But I've been to India and eating curry for breakfast, lunch and dinner was a bit hardship. But that's my favourite food. Like a good
I love
curry.
it. I love it. Brilliant. If you could have coffee with one historical figure, who would it be?
Oh, one historical figure. My mind has gone completely blank. I think it would be someone, maybe someone around kind of like who, like the early days of learning about gut health. Because people like, and it's bad, I don't know actually who the names are, but people like thousands of years ago knew that there was something there without having the technology that we know now. So I would love to just pick their brains about what they knew. But I'm sure there's probably a much more interesting answer.
Not in the slightest. No, I think that makes absolute sense. So, what's the number one reason that people fail to succeed when it comes to nutrition in your experience? Short answer, not a long 10-minute answer. Short answer. Number one thing, what gets in the way?
Mindset. They think that they'll fail.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And I'm just wondering, if you could go back to your 18-year-old self and give yourself a pearl of wisdom, what would you go back and tell her?
I would tell her, stop worrying about what other people think, because they really don't care. We think people care so much about us, but it's just worry about yourself.
I love it. I love it. And if you could summarize your experience with us here at Unleash Your Potential in one word, what word would you use?
Enlightening.
Amazing. Amazing. Laura, thank you so much again for your time today. I really appreciate your pearls of wisdom and knowledge, and I know loads of people are going to enjoy that. We've had Phil Hanlon here with us today on the live feed, and he said he's picked up so much. So thank you, Phil, for being here. And it's great to hear that you are getting so much from all of this. If you are interested in hearing more about NLP, and maybe you're interested in working NLP into your existing business or into your existing role that you're doing, then do get in touch and let's have a chat and let's find out how NLP might be able to better support you in what you do to help other people. You can, of course, go and check out our website, unleashyourpotential.org.uk, where you'll find out all about the NLP practitioner course, which we're delivering both live in Cardiff and online now. So wherever you're listening to this podcast around the world, you can come and train with me in NLP and start to learn some of the things that Laura has been talking about today. So thank you, Laura. Thank you to our amazing listeners that have listened to this episode. And I'm going to be back very soon with the 8th and possibly final episode of Series 6. So stay tuned for that. Take care, everyone.